This is the
Five Stars
Podcast.
Let me talk to you. This is such good shit.
What's going on, everyone? It is Monday, September 20th, 2021, and you are currently tuned into the Five Starr Wrestling Report podcast. If you're checking the show out for the first time, welcome aboard. Hope you enjoy the content today. We got two shows coming your way each week here on YouTube and Rumble. Monday's show is a recap show for AEW Rampage, NWA Powerrr, and weekend events, pay-per-views, or news bulletins. And Friday's show is the NXT and AEW Dynamite recap show. If you want to support the channel going forward, do me a favor and help me out by subscribing, clicking that bell icon to stay notified of our 2 weekly podcast shows. Make sure you give this video a like. And as I continue to shout from the hilltops with each and every episode, apparently I have not gotten the message across, especially for you returning viewers. Comment. I need those comments to help me out in the algorithms here. I want to hear your thoughts on the shows, thoughts on wrestling topics, whatever's on your mind. I want to hear it down below. Help me out here, folks. Leave a comment. In addition to finding my shows here on YouTube, you can also head over to my Rumble page and check out my content there. Links for those will always be in the bio. And the last thing that I want to plug real quick before we get things going, check out my article content on the Chairshot website. I write opinion pieces each week for the site on various wrestling topics and news bulletins. If you go over to www.chairshot.com, click under the opinion column, you will usually find my content under the name Star or Tommy Star. And do me a favor, just head over there, read a couple of my pieces. I'll always try to write things that are out of the box and get your brain stirring a little bit. You will not be disappointed. And as always, I will leave my most recent publication in the description box so you can catch the direct link there, and it'll take you right over and give you a little taste of the kind of content that I'm writing. So today's a little bit of a packed show. We got the usual Rampage and Power report to go over, but I also realized, probably within the last few days here, that the G1 Climax series is kickstarting, and it actually kickstarted as of the 18th. And, I had totally forgotten about it, and I imagine I'm not the only one. But I watched the G1 a couple years ago. Generally thought the shows were good. Aside from the Wrestle Kingdom each year, it's usually the hottest period for New Japan's product. So I'm going to start including the G1 as part of the recap reports going forward. And this year we're at G1 Climax 31. And like I said, I'm just going to add that to the series over the course of the next month. It'll give me something else to cover on these shows. It'll be a nice contrast to the usual AEW and WWE content that I cover each week. If New Japan is not your style, well, I'll make sure I cover everything toward the end so you can watch the other content and click away once I get there. But I think you'll be interested to hear my insight on some of it. Because if you watch this show consistently now, you know that I don't really have blended opinions with the mass public, if that makes any sense. But with all that said, let's dive into the show. And we will begin, as always, with Rampage from this past Friday. This would be the September 17th edition. We had a Ricky Starks sighting on commentary, which definitely won't complain about that. I did have to listen to Jericho's dumbass for the hour, which was nauseating. And by the way, I thought the stips were that Jericho would only do commentary on Rampage if MJF beat him at All Out. So what the hell is he doing on commentary? So you go back on a stip and you job out MJF on pay-per-view? Assholes. Butcher and Blade versus the Lucha Bros for the AEW tag titles. Excalibur tried to force feed the newest wrestling propaganda that the Young Bucks Lucha Bros cage match was the, quote, greatest cage match of all time. It wasn't, people. Don't buy into that bullshit. We were also informed here that Butcher and Blade are ranked number 1 in the tag division, being on a 7-match win streak. Hence, they earned this title match. I don't even remember the last time I saw Butcher on television, much less wrestle a match with Blade, but whatever, I'll take the word for it. I dig the Butcher's look. Pepper Parks, Blade, whatever you want to call him. I mean, I'm pretty much ambivalent about him either way. But Butcher's someone that I would strongly consider giving a singles push to at some point. Have him work some mid-card programs against the younger babyface talents. Maybe have him work a TNT championship match at some point. Just a thought. I mean, it was a Lucha Bros match. There's some good moments, some head-scratching moments, some completely ridiculous moments. It's all over the map. I mean, they did the usual deal where Phoenix and Pentagon are in there doing illegal double-team moves, and the ref does not enforce the rules at all. And to be fair, Lucha Bros were not exclusive to this conversation, because there were plenty of moments in this match where Butcher and Blade were doing the exact same thing. And just hitting double-team moves in front of the ref for extended periods of time, and he does nothing to stop it. Anyway, Lucha Bros retained in a finishing idea that was pretty clever on the surface, but did not have the impact that it should have. Butcher and Blade tie up Penta's mask on the turnbuckle, and they're about to hit their powerbomb neckbreaker combo on Phoenix, but Penta yanks his mask off and runs over to make the save. And then Phoenix gets a Hurricane Rana on Butcher to pin him. Like I said, it was a cool idea, but something like that should have had more drama. They should have built that up for a pay-per-view where they could have spent more time building the suspense. And then we had the Hardy Enterprise garbage afterwards, which I really don't want to even get into. It was a mass beatdown. Same shit we're used to seeing AEW post-match. There's also like 15 different teams and factions aligned with this group, and I have no idea why any of them are in the group at all. And more importantly, I have not been given a reason to care, therefore I don't. And Matt Hardy just needs to go away. The Bryan Danielson Kenny Omega video package was pretty good. Danielson could still use some clothing layers, but aside from that, I mean, the content I liked. I think it's a mistake giving this match away on free TV instead of building it up to pay-per-view, but I'm still not ruling out the whole Christian story here where they're probably booking it to have Bryan go over in the first match, non-title, and then they'll do the rematch at Full Gear. Again, not how I would do it, but it's their company. They can do whatever they want. I mean, I personally think it's a mistake jobbing out Kenny 2 times in short time periods. Especially when you have Hangman Page waiting in the wings to beat Kenny for the title. If that even is the idea at this point, I really don't even know. I mean, at this stage, I'd argue the idea that if Bryan is going to beat Kenny to set up the title match on pay-per-view, fuck it, just have Bryan win the damn thing at that point anyway. I mean, you already established that Kenny's beatable. If you have Bryan go over the first time just to have him lose to Kenny in the second go-around, you're just taking the 50-50 WWE booking approach, which is a horrible idea. So, I mean, there's a whole list of ways they could go there, but I don't know. We had Bunny versus Anna Jay in what I would like to pay tribute to as my designated coffee break. I don't know what happened, but it probably sucked. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? We had an absolutely horrible skit up next with Matt Hardy and Jack Evans beating up some fat fuck in the front row and shaving his head. Because, you know, Matt wants to shave Orange Cassidy's head. Because reasons. Sports-based wrestling, people. Remember that. So, well, then we had this banger of a segment with Britt Baker and Ruby Soho. Actually, what did Taz call this? A roasting session? Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. This was your average run-of-the-mill women's shit talk fest, and it did not disappoint. I can tell you this. Women are very good at a lot of things, but when it comes to arguing with one another, women know how to turn up the deep fryers and just go off on each other. Britt was making fun of Ruby for changing her hair color and her ring attire because after all of these years, she still has no idea how to fit in with society. I really like the bit where Ruby took the shot at Britt being no different from every chick she's ever stood across from her self-entitled outlook to her generic appearance, even to schlepping some dude in the back. More stuff here. Yeah, Britt took some shots at Ruby getting fired from WWE, but Ruby said that this is her opportunity to show who she really is. Basically concludes with her saying that after next week, Britt can continue to call herself a lot of things, but the one thing she won't be able to call herself is AEW Women's World Champion. I mean, it was entertaining. Certainly the best thing Ruby's done since she debuted, which probably isn't saying a whole lot. Certainly I'll say this, and this might be an unpopular opinion. This is the best women's program AEW's had since its inception. And for those of you that are going to try and argue or anything that they ever did with Riho or Hikaru Shida, just fuck off. There's still a pretty substantial split with the crowd between these two. I think people really want to cheer for Ruby, but they're not quite ready to boo Britt right now. So, kind of a weird dynamic right now. It'll be interesting to see how they react if Ruby beats Britt next week for the belt. But, yeah, man, definitely a good promo exchange here. And our main event for the show was Fuego del Sol and Miro in what I guess they billed as Title versus Car. It was actually a very simplistic match in terms of layout, but I thought it was perfect for what they were trying to do. Fuego got a little bit of offense early on, got his usual hope spots, but Miro pretty much beat his ass and left him for dead. I actually kind of like what they did in this match as opposed to what they did in their initial match. Aside from the fact that the first match was really short, they actually kind of let Fuego make a real concise comeback attempt here. But it was weird because, it lasted for maybe 10 seconds before Miro cut him off and finished him off. And I can't really tell for sure, but, it almost looked like Fuego fucked up his running tornado DDT, so maybe they called an audible and Miro just said, let's go home here. And then after Miro retained, he grabbed the lanyard with the keys, jammed him into Fuego's mouth, put him in the camel clutch momentarily, and then Sammy Guevara ran out and pretty much laid out a challenge that he wants the next title shot. Which, I'm definitely not opposed to, although Guevara's cooled off pretty considerably since the stadium shitfest over the summer. And if he's going to be the guy to win the title, not my first choice, but again, not my company. But like I said, as a main event segment, it was effective. Not every match needs 1,500 high spots and 45 crash TV run-ins to be good pro wrestling. Overall, not a great show, but, there was enough good here to make the hour not feel like a total waste of time. Personally, I think they could have spent more time trying to build up the Grand Slam stuff for next week. Maybe that would probably be my, one general complaint about the show. You cut out all the stupid Matt Hardy skits in the women's match and, use that time to do some promo packages or ring interviews to build up Dynamite and Rampage next week. because those are pretty big shows. At least that's what they're promoting them as. I mean, you're essentially hotshotting a bunch of potential pay-per-view matches on free television. So why would you not want to build those up? You know, they did a little bit of it with the Powerhouse Hobbs CM Punk thing, but could have used more of it. Regardless, though, like I said, they're going out of their way to make next week feel big league. So guess we'll find out how it pays off in execution. Moving along here to NWA Powerrr from September 14th, 2021. By the way, is there something going on with the Into the Fire theme? I thought I read somewhere that NWA was having copyright issues, and that's why they had to change the opening theme. I don't know. Maybe someone could clarify that. I'm not really sure what's going on there. I mean, it was a great opening song, and certainly better than this replacement they found. We began the show with this Trevor Murdoch Nick Aldus promo exchange, which honestly should have just been the whole show. I mean, it went on for a while, so I'm not going to recap everything in its entirety, but, you know, essentially the message was Trevor thanked Aldus for giving him the fight of his life at NWA 73, said he made Trevor earn that title win, and he earned his respect out of it. Aldus he basically told a story about traveling down to Eldon, Missouri in 2007 just for the opportunity to train with Harley Race. Said that Trevor was at the camp and, you know, Aldus received some of the best advice he could ask for. Talked about meeting up with Trevor at Harley's funeral a couple years ago and asked him why he's not wrestling anymore. Trevor, by the way, not Harley. Okay, sorry. Bad joke. Fuck. Anyway, what else happened here? Oh yeah, Aldus, you know, talked to Trevor to come to Atlanta. You know, said things are different in the NWA. Said they treat the business well and they treat the world title with respect. Told him that he's the man now, and if he could offer an extension of advice, it's going to be a hard but a rich and rewarding experience. And then they both shook hands afterwards. Great stuff from the two. I don't think they covered anything groundbreaking that we didn't hear them cover in the last couple weeks, but, you know, Aldous' promo was outstanding. They bury their hatchet. They're going to go their own separate ways for the time being, but, you know, they essentially planted the idea that Aldus will be back in the title picture down the road. And, you know, I definitely think that it would be worth revisiting this feud at some point, you know, because these two have really good chemistry with one another. How you would differentiate the babyface heel dynamic, I don't really know where you go with that. But like I said, this is a good rivalry. I part of me kind of wishes I would have kept up more with it prior to their 73 match, because you know, based on the promo video that they played before that pay-per-view match, I mean, it seemed like the story was really good between these two and that they were really invested in it. So yeah, good stuff. The Rude Dudes versus Aaron Stevens and Kratos in the Mystery Tag Team Tournament with no brackets. And if there are brackets out there somewhere, I sure as hell am not going out of my way to Google search it. Put up a graphic, guys. It's not that hard. Anyway, the action here was sufficient enough, but I had a real hard time trying to figure out the story they were trying to tell with Kratos and Stevens. Because the announcer spent like the whole match talking about how, you know, these two are on good terms now and they put their differences behind them, which either signified to me that they were feuding at one point or they were the tag partners that couldn't get along. In any case, you know, Kratos pretty much beat up the Rude Dudes 2-on-1. Stevens sort of watched on the apron, got a hot tag, immediately got cut off. Kratos tagged back in, did a bunch of deadlift pickups and throws before pinning one of the dudes after a vertical suplex. And then they had a post-match promo where Kratos was telling Stevens that he sees fire in him, but he wants Stevens to let it out. He wants that ruthless aggression. I mean, I liked it. Kratos is a hell of a promo. Like I said, I just couldn't really figure out what exactly the story is they're going for. You know, other than Kratos wanting Stevens to be more assertive.
No,
be assertive. Not insertive.
Up next, we had James, Storm, and Judas do a face-off. And, well, long story short here, Storm wants a fight with Judas. James Mitchell called Storm a stupid redneck and a pimple on the ass of wrestling and some other vulgar terms. Storm was like, dude, I have no idea half the shit you just said, but you're damn right I'm a redneck, I'm the cowboy, and I'm ready for a fight. And, of course, he said that with much more vigor than I just did. And I don't need to elaborate anymore on how great a promo James Storm has always been. I don't really know much about the Judas guy, other than the fact that he won a Gauntlet Battle Royal to earn a title match, which now it kind of looks like they're going in the direction of having James Storm chase the title. And actually, that kind of makes more sense in the grand scheme of things, considering the champion is Chris Adonis, who I think is a heel, right? But I guess we'll see where they go with that. Paula Blaze and Marty Bell wrestled, I think. God bless Paula, bro. She sucks. She's got 2 left feet out there, and Marty Bell's no spring chicken herself, so yeah, not good. But they're still doing the whole deal with Terrence Crew going after Marty and Allison Kay and the women's tag belts, so they got that feud going. And then Camille jumped Melina at the desk and pretty much scared the piss out of poor Velvet. And that could be an interesting program. Melina had a really good match with, what the fuck's her name? Perazo? Deonna Purrazzo? Yeah, that's it. She'll probably have her work cut out for her against Camille, but I could see her and Melina having a good match. Then we had a series of rapid-fire interviews, each of which diminished in quality as they went along. First, we had Pope, who is pimping, by the way, and he basically laid the groundwork of going after Trevor Murdoch in the world title, which I'm totally down for. Then we had JTG and Colby Corino, who I totally mistook for Austin Aries at a first glance. And, first JTG tried to speak, emphasis on tried, but Colby quickly put a stop to that. He said, get that mic over here, don't let that fool speak. And I'll be honest, I don't even remember what Colby said. It wasn't really that substantial. Then somehow this led to Chelsea Green and Kiera Hogan coming out. Chelsea is apparently doing the zombie bride gimmick she did in TNA years ago, which I do vaguely recall after doing a quick YouTube search. I think that was right around the time they were doing the Broken Matt Hardy deal in TNA, which kind of goes to show you just how a pitiful a state TNA was even back then. Anyway, Chelsea threatened to kill Camille or something like that. It was bad. Even May couldn't keep a straight face, knowing how fucking ludicrous it all was. And then we had Kiera try to say words. She honestly tried to talk about Mickie James and honestly tried to talk about how much she disrespected her in her match a couple weeks ago. And then she honestly tried to challenge her to a face-off. And I can honestly say that Kiera probably should never speak on this show again. Yeah, this was a sequentially deteriorating segment in every way possible. As my notes read here, Jordan Cleanwater, yes, that is a typo, versus Scion versus Jeremiah Plunkett in a 3-way that really kind of gave me perspective of just how god-awful this new roster is. I'll be honest, I had no fucking clue what happened here. I have no idea why Austin Idol and his crew ran interference. I have no idea who he is aligned with, or... well, pretty much I don't know why this match existed, other than to find an opponent for Tyrus. Cleanwater won. And the main event was Jax Dane and Crimson in an open hand slap fight. When the hell was that promoted? I thought they were supposed to have a wrestling match. Well, regardless, I was not a particular fan of seeing guys get slapped across the face as hard as humanly possible. I mean, I know it's highly unlikely these guys would have been at risk of concussion, but come on, guys, really? You couldn't do an arm wrestling contest? It also should be noted that Trevor Murdoch was out there as the special enforcer. Okay. I mean, I really don't have much else to say about the first part of the segment. Honestly, I think it would have been more effective to have them wrestle a match for a minute and do a DQ or something and then break into the Afterbirth deal. Because the whole thing was just a big extended angle to lead to Dane sucker punching Crimson and, then kick-starting a huge brawl to close out the show. We had Pope out there, we had Strictly Business, we had James Storm and Judas do their deal. It just kind of broke down into mass pandemonium. I mean, it was a good closer to the show. They kind of left things open-ended with the world title picture, which I definitely dig. I think they want to go with Jax Dane at some point, but, they also made it pretty clear that Pope wants a title match too, so they're putting out options on the table for Murdoch right now, which is good. And there was some good stuff on the show. NWA always kind of falls into the opposite category with most wrestling programs where, the ring action is usually the least impressive stuff on the show, and the promos and angles are what kind of carries the bulk of the programming. And it's definitely a good thing, in comparison to AEW and WWE where most guys can't speak a lick to save their lives. It's good to watch a wrestling show where guys actually know how to talk and get their points across effectively. The Aldus Murdoch promo was absolutely incredible. I like all the options they're leaving out there for potential world title challengers. The low point of the show was the women's stuff by far. Some people will call me a misogynist for it, but I really don't care. Shit sucked, man. I'm not going to lie. When the women are involved with good stuff, I will acknowledge it, i.e. Britt Baker and Ruby Soho doing a face-off in the ring. But when women's segments suck, I am not going to hold back. Mickie James, you want blank slate equalism, to coin a phrase? There's your equalism. Do better. Encourage your women to do better. All right, and that brings us to the G1 Climax 31, nights 1 and 2. I do want to preface this before I get into the report here. The last New Japan show or event that I watched was back in January of 2020, right before the bug hit. I believe that was Wrestle Kingdom 14. So it has been quite a while since I've watched anything New Japan related. And that's by choice, of course. I think, one thing that really hurt the enjoyment for a lot of people was the lack of buzz about the product over the course of the last year. Obviously the pandemic certainly didn't do the company any favors. But, yeah, the general morale for this company is just almost at an all-time low, at least in modern history. And there have been a lot of injuries going down within the last year. Lots of wrestling card fluctuations, people testing positive for COVID and then having to flip-flop cards around. So, yeah, this product's been a hurting unit for a while. I think they kind of lost the plot a little bit with, who exactly they wanted to build the show around, sort of that post-Okada title reign. A lot of factors, but I did watch the G1 tournament a couple years ago. I actually had some fond memories of being on vacation in Virginia and sitting around watching the shows in their entirety, and I enjoyed it for the most part. I did not watch any of the preliminary stuff, nor do I have any intention of doing so going forward. But I did watch all the A block and B block matches from nights 1 and 2, and I'm going to cover those here. Going forward, I'm probably going to tack on the subsequent block matches in my Friday and Monday shows, and I'll just spread them out over the course of the next couple weeks. I'm a busy guy right now, so chances are I'm going to fall drastically behind, so you'll have to forgive me for not being on top of the reporting, but it is what it is. I'll also probably be doing a lot of entrance skipping, so be forewarned. And speaking of skipping, we were off to a rather awful start with my viewing experience here. I had streaming issues trying to watch the first two matches here on replay. I don't know if anyone else had that problem, but yeah, the Kota Ibushi, Yujiro Takahashi, and Great Okan Tongaloa matches, I couldn't get the damn things to play properly. I got about a minute into the Ibushi match, got buffering for about 30 seconds, then it would start up again, buffer for another 30 seconds, tried skipping ahead to the second round match, same problem. And anyone that respects and values their time and energy would let that repetition go for about 2 minutes before saying, fuck it, moving on. So, I don't know what happened in those matches. I don't know who won. And judging how little investment people had in this year's G1 altogether, and judging the wrestlers in the opening round matches, I probably didn't miss much anyway. So I paused, took a breather, let off some steam. And by that, I just went down to do some laundry real quick and came back up, skipped ahead to the third round match, and was actually able to watch the rest of the show without buffering problems. And boy, if there was ever a match that I could have used some buffering in, it was his third round match here. A block match 3, Toriano versus Kenta. Good to see Kenta again. I always kind of forget he exists. Not intentionally, of course. I don't know. He was never my flavor in WWE, and I think I remember watching him work the G1 a couple years ago and being left feeling underwhelmed. So, fuck, this match took forever to get going. Who am I kidding? The match never got going to begin with. First, Kenta had the ring announcer read a huge bio spiel, which took like 5 minutes, and all of it was in Japanese, so I didn't know what he was saying. Then Kenta and Toru had the ref check the other for rolls of tape, which they both had, and that went another 5 minutes. Then they rang the bell, and Kenta wasted 5 minutes on the floor stalling and running away from Toru. So, and it was a Toriano match, and, you know, anyone that's watched New Japan knows the guy's a total gimmick. His matches usually suck, and I have no idea why they put this clown in the tournament virtually every year, but he does usually provide for some of the more memorable moments of the tournament. They had a deal at one point where Kenta taped Yana's wrist around one of the entrance posts and tried to win by countout. They did some more stuff. Ref ended up taking a bump in the opening match of the tournament, by the way. There was some more shit with tape, and I was about 30 seconds away from fast-forwarding to the finish. Instead, I went to heat my coffee up, and when I came back, the ref was doing a countout. Yano snuck back into the ring, kicked Kenta in the groin for a false finish. Then he kicked him in the balls again and pinned him. Sucked. Then Kevin Kelly had the gall to say after the opening match that New Japan has the best scientific wrestling in the business. Fuck off. Up next was Block 4. We had Tetsu Naito versus Zack Sabre Jr. God, after that opening clunker, I would have pretty much settled for anything after that. Luckily, this match was actually more than halfway decent. I always like watching Sabre wrestle. You know, when he's doing his submission work and his chain wrestling, that guy does a lot of innovative things that you just don't see on mainstream television anymore in pro wrestling. You know, Sabre was always kind of interesting to me, too, in the sense that like, he's a rail-thin guy, but he's built like an athlete. You could tell this guy works out pretty extensively. Like, even though he's really skinny, he's not short. So he's got a little bit of size that doesn't make him look fragile by comparison. So, I guess the story they were playing up here was whether or not the match would go the 30-minute time limit. Apparently, they wrestled a match last year that went about 28 minutes, so they were toying with the idea that these guys would know each other well enough to go Broadway, the coin a term in the business. Thanks, Jim. There's a lot of good stuff here with Zack working over Naito's leg, working Naito on the mat, and using a lot of creative holds. Naito would do a flurry of offense, but Sabre would quickly cut him off and work him over. So in essence, the match really didn't pick up until about 25 minutes in, which, you know, I was okay with. Naito hit some reverse DDT off the top rope that I've never seen before. I don't even remember what they called it. Esperanza? Sounds like a book I read in middle school. Whatever it was brutal. They picked up the action toward the end, last 5 or so minutes in particular. I wasn't a big fan of the perpetual dropping each other on their neck spots, but I mean, that's kind of New Japan's thing. A lot of DDTs. And in a really good finish, Sabre put Naito in whatever that modified Indian deathlock he did was. And Naito lasted in the hold for about a minute before he tapped out. Yeah, I really like this match. Good stuff from both guys. And like I said before, I've watched Sabre's work for years now, and he's always a fun guy to watch wrestle. God, can you imagine he was around during the Dynamite Kid days? The work those two could have done with each other. Incredible. And to close out the night, we had the Block 5 match. Tomohiro Ishii versus Shingo Takagi. Mean guy fight here. Ishii's the fucking man. And most of the match was just both guys doing forearms and chops and jabs to the face and head. We did have more of the usual dropping guys recklessly on the backs of their heads and necks, but again, New Japan's been doing it for years, so you kind of get numb to seeing it after a while. And for anyone that needs a perfect model of what it looks like when you get dropped on your neck for the majority of your career, take a look at Ishii. There was a really scary moment about midway through the match. Ishii had Takagi up on the top rope. He was going for like some kind of deadlift superplex, but he lost his grip on Takagi and almost dropped him right on his head and neck, which sure the hell would have been the end of Takagi's career as we know it. And, of course they tried the spot again, and Ishii's like, no, fuck you, I'm going to hit this superplex. And he got Takagi up on the ropes, he hoisted him up over his head, and he hit it. We had another ref bump here, which I wasn't too fond of. Of course, it didn't amount to anything, because Red Shoes was up on his feet less than a minute later. They went back and forth at the end with counters and kickouts. They were really milking the time limit, and with about 2 minutes left, both guys did a standoff with stiff shots and headbutts. Takagi ended up grabbing Ishii's wrist, hoisting him up on his shoulders, and he hit the last of the dragon for the 3 count. And they had a quick post-match deal where both guys were still trying to slug it out with one another, which I kind of thought was funny. But this was good regardless. As a match, I probably preferred the Sabre-Naito match over this one, but I'm always a sucker for the Haas fight deal in pro wrestling, and I always know when I watch an Ishii match, I'm going to get that. I mean, the dude's a fucking wreck physically, but he's intense. I'll give him that. So, match of the night for me was Naito Sabre, but Ishii Takagi was still good nonetheless. Then we had the B block rounds for night 2, which I ended up watching late last night. I actually forgot how long these New Japan shows were. I set aside some time in the morning, about 3 hours, to watch both shows and take notes in preparation for the podcast. And about halfway through the A block show, I was like, damn, there's no way I'm going to be able to watch the B block in one sitting. So I ended up coming back late at night and watching the B block matches. And once again, skipping over the opening deal, jumped right to Evil versus Yoshihashi in the Block 1 round. Generally, I didn't write a whole lot about it. Most of the match was just Yoshihashi getting his ass kicked. Dick Togo ran interference for a lot of it. They did a lot of shenanigans at the end with Togo running in, Evil taking the ref, going for low blows, yada yada. By the way, I kind of find it amusing that guys are just allowed to make physical contact with New Japan officials at any point, and they're never disqualified for it. Probably explains why it translates over here on AEW programming and everyone thinks it's okay. Well, they do it in New Japan, so obviously it's okay if AEW does it. Yeah, suck my dick. Hashi made a comeback at the end, had Evil in a cool visual pin, but Togo had the ref, and finally Evil hit Hashi with a groin shot, hit Everything is Evil, and got the win. I guess Evil's a part of the Bullet Club now. Again, you'll have to forgive me. I haven't watched New Japan in a couple of years, but could have sworn he was aligned with Los Ingobernales, which was like, what, 2 years ago? So, I don't know. I mean, I don't have any investment in New Japan factions anyway. Mostly I'm just apathetic toward factions in wrestling, period. Especially after watching AEW and seeing everyone being in some type of group or faction. I like how this report turned into an AEW thrashing session. Next up was the second round match. Chase Owens and Jeff Cobb. Again, not a whole lot to really say about it. Cobb's a good athlete. I can either take or leave Chase Owens, if I'm being frank. Haven't really watched enough of his singles work to gain any kind of opinion. Kind of just looks generic to me. Put it this way. If I can visualize a pro wrestler working the customer service booth at a Walmart, you probably don't have a whole lot going for you. Match was mostly inoffensive. They went back and forth at the end. Cobb hit his Tour of the Islands power slam. Got the win. That's really all I have to say about it. Sorry if I should have come out expecting more. Third round, we had Sonata versus Tom Otonga. They tried some stuff here. Tonga did a lot of taunting, kept suckering in Sonata to work him over, so I can at least credit them for trying to go with some kind of story, but again, man, it was a lot like previous two matches. I just don't have a whole lot to say. The action was fine, but it didn't really do anything memorable or even noteworthy. I will say the one thing I really didn't like about it was the finishing sequence. Sonata had Tonga in that cold skull submission hold and basically had him on the verge of passing out. And instead of him ending the match right then and there, Sonata just lets go so he can go hit a moonsault. And then Tonga countered it anyway. Just made Sonata look like an idiot. And then they wrestled for another minute, and Sonata won with a bridging pin anyway. So, essentially, they dragged out an already way too long match by another minute and a half. And if anything, that would probably be my general number one complaint about both shows. I mean, I guess they're cutting back on all the prelim stuff and mainly focusing the shows around the G1 matches, which is good in the sense that I don't have to skip through a bunch of stuff beforehand, but it's bad in the sense that it probably means a lot of these matches are going to go 15, 20, 25 minutes when most of them could probably go 10 and perfectly suffice. I mean, they could have easily cut back 5 to 10 minutes on this match alone and probably would have been no different. In fact, it might have been better off. Then we had Hiroki Goto and Taichi in the fourth block round. I've seen a lot of Taichi matches. Not a big fan. I don't get the gimmick. I don't like his ring work. I don't think he's a particularly great talent. He does have charisma, I'll give him that, but just not my cup of tea. I think a lot of it, too, has to do with the fact that I already see a lot of stalling and ring interference garbage from the Bullet Club matches, so, when I see Taichi and Gato doing the same thing, I don't know. I don't think they're aligned with the Bullet Club, correct me if I'm wrong, but it just ends up being more of the same old BS. Match here was alright for the most part. Wasn't a particular fan of the part where both guys were just blatantly choking each other in the middle of the ring for a minute straight and the ref just let it go. But to be blunt, it was probably one of the more memorable parts of the match. I think both guys kind of got blown up toward the end too, which probably didn't help. Taichi won with whatever the hell that move's called. Mephisto, fisting, something like that. Probably should be careful. Not sure if that's one of YouTube's newspeak terms that I'm not permitted to say without getting flagged. And the main event was Kazuchika Okada and Hiroshi Tanahashi in the fifth block round. Obviously, I've seen these guys wrestle hundreds of times before, so I kind of already knew what I was going to expect going in. They've had plenty of good matches before. I think I saw them in the G1 2019, right? Yeah. Obviously their work dates all the way back to 2010, so To say they know each other well would be an understatement. I always kind of run hot and cold with Okada's matches. I'm not as high on the whole match trio series he had with Kenny Omega a few years ago as a lot of people are. I think people tend to overrate his work strictly based on that feud alone. I also hate the fact that he uses the Tombstone Pile Driver as a transitional move into a fucking clothesline. And I can never get over how stupid that is. But I can't deny this. When an Okada match comes up in New Japan, he does have a presence. And it gives his matches that big fight feel. So, I'll give it that. Whereas earlier I was talking about how there'll probably be a tendency to drag out these G1 matches longer than really warranted, this match I actually had a reason to go almost the full 30 minutes. The basic story is they both faced each other countless times, but they have a 3-match series draw, and all of those draws just so happen to come from their previous G1 matches. So it would stand to reason that this match would almost go the full distance. And, basically playing up the idea is, are they going to go to another series draw in the G1, or is one of them finally going to better the other? And it took a while to get going. They started off slow with a lot of chain wrestling and holds. Eventually things picked up about midway through with Tanahashi working over Okada's leg. Okada acting all cocky toward the beginning, but started to pick up the pace once he realized he was sort of in a vulnerable position. They did a lot of counters and switches toward the end. Both guys trying to go for tombstones on each other, quick pin exchanges, reverses out of the Rainmaker, which again is probably another reason I hate that Rainmaker move so much. It's just a simple fact that, dudes are always ducking it, reversing it, or sometimes even Okada, when he hits it, it just feels random and out of place. I don't know. Regardless, they boiled everything down to the last minute. They did some back and forth forearm shots. Okada hit a big drop kick off the ropes. He does have a great looking drop kick, by the way. I got to give him that. He planted Tanahashi with, I guess it was a Michinoku driver. Looked like he was going for the tombstone, but he had trouble getting Tanahashi up in position for it, so he just planted him down on his back. And then he hit the Rainmaker at, what did they say, 29:36. So, crunch time win there, but it was enjoyable. Easily the best match out of the night, and probably the best between both nights. And generally, I like both shows. Like I said, I'm going to keep recapping them over the next month or so and just include them into the podcast episodes. Chances are I'll get drastically behind with everything. Having only doing 2 podcasts a week, I don't have the time to do a third show, otherwise I would. I think the genuine consensus here from a lot of New Japan fans is the G1 just kind of lacks talent depth this year. And I don't watch the product consistently enough to have an opinion either way. It definitely feels a little different from a couple years ago, especially without guys like Moxley or Suzuki or even Ospreay. And I know Ospreay's out with injury right now, so can't really do anything about that. But yeah, I definitely can see where a lot of people are coming from with that. I'm not as big a fan of Kevin Kelly's commentary as a lot of people are. He's definitely better than most commentators out there in the business today, but he's just never been my flavor. I will say this, though. While I don't follow New Japan's product regularly, I always find things to enjoy about the shows. I appreciate the style they do. I like the atmosphere. It's such a stark contrast to the kind of wrestling we see here in the States, but it's very refreshing. Like, I don't know. I don't mean to keep shit talking AEW, but they keep trying to market and promote themselves as like this sports-based wrestling company, and it's like there are elements of it from time to time, but God, a lot of it just comes off so WWE light. And then I watch a New Japan show and I'm like, this is kind of the model of what sports-based wrestling is. So, and I understand a lot of this style won't translate over into the States as much. So I understand why AEW doesn't just adopt this ring style entirely, but I don't know, just me. And like I said, while I don't particularly like Kelly as a commentator, he always does a spectacular job getting the stories across. I mean, he's definitely someone that any ring announcer or whoever's doing commentary in the business today, they need to study him. Really need to watch him. You know, he dives into the history of guys' past matches. He knows the shows, the dates, the stories, the whole gamut. You know, and for a guy like me that really needs that story context to be able to have any kind of real emotional investment, I can appreciate that. So we'll look forward to see how shows progress from here. Yeah, and like I said, nights 3 and 4 will be covered in Friday's edition. So, you know, you'll already know by the time Friday rolls around that I'll be a few nights behind with everything, but it is the way that it is. Guys, if you want to support my channel going forward and you want to help this podcast grow, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment. I'll continue to reiterate that each and every time until I see a fucking comment on the show. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching. I'll be back on Friday for the NXT and AEW Dynamite recaps, and that'll also be where I cover nights 3 and 4 of the G1. Take care, all. Peace.